GM, everybody. How the heck are we doing today on Monday, April 20th? Happy 420 to all of those who celebrate. What a time to be alive, huh? We have had just an absolutely crazy weekend in blockchain and crypto. And we are just absolutely continuing security season. Just an insane happening this past weekend. There were two major attacks that took place. The KelpDAO hack, which saw $290 to $293 million in RS ETH, restaked ETH, being stolen. And then the absolute sheer amount of contagion that spread across Ethereum DeFi. And then there was also the Vercel hack. And we'll get into this in a little bit, but Vercel is the primary provider for services for a lot of front-end activities on like DeFi platforms. So another kind of like super dangerous and risky hack. And we'll get into both. That being said, if you have not yet, please subscribe to The Smart Economist. You can see the link below, thesmarteconomist.beehive.com. Every week we put together fantastic newsletters, using strong signal for what happened in the broader blockchain and cryptocurrency industry. And I'm tweaking these as much as I can to provide as much value as possible, while not also just giving you the same information that you hear week in and week out on these various different newsletters. All right. Well, I have done a lot of reading about what happened with Layer 0. And I want to just see if we can break it down as simple as possible for y'all. But first, let me just do a quick little RT on the TL. See if this makes any difference or not. All right. Well, first of all, North Korea was likely responsible for this attack. Go figure. What's new, eh? Let's just here. I prepared an overview for y'all. So what the heck happened? On April 18th, a little bit more than $290 million of KelpDAO's RS ETH was drained via their bridge, which is maintained by Layer 0, an omni-chain bridging platform. Approximately 116,500 RS ETH were stolen via the Unichain to Ethereum bridging path. This is the largest DeFi exploit to date in 2026. And the Ethereum bridge adapter inventory went from 116,723 RS ETH to 223 RS ETH in a single block. Kelp's emergency freeze landed 46 minutes after the first release, which was able to save roughly $100 million from the second queued drain. Okay, so that was the basics for the attack and kind of the high-level overview of how much RS ETH was stolen and how. And again, RS ETH is just a wrapped version of ETH. So if it helps to make the numbers easier to consume in your head, just think of the price of RS ETH, each token, as the price of ETH. And right now, ETH is trading at $2,300. So this is just an absolutely massive attack. Just gargantuan. Who are the attackers? Well, it hasn't been confirmed by law enforcement yet, but the DPRK's Lazarus group, specifically the subgroup called Trader. This has been described as a sophisticated state actor operation, and on-chain forensics are supporting that claim. The intake wallet and 7 branch wallets were all freshly funded via Tornado Cash in the hours before the exploit. I just want to highlight again that law enforcement has not verified this was Lazarus Group. Layer 0 is saying it. So bear with me. I compiled a ton of resources of what happened, the technical explanations of what happened from super intelligent people. And then I dumbed it down with the support of my agent to kind of like provide a high-level overview for what this attack was and how it happened. So Layer 0 is a bridging solution, a cross-chain bridging solution. And they use something called a decentralized verifier network to check whether a transaction actually happens on the source chain, on the chain that they're connecting with, before releasing funds to the destination chain, the other chain that Layer 0 is providing that connection with. This is a bridging solution. The DVN read that a source chain data through RPC nodes and that the servers relayed that blockchain information. Remember this, RPC nodes. The attackers compromised the RPC nodes by feeding Layer 0 decentralized verifier network, feeding it forged data to show a transaction on Unichain that never actually occurred. This is where it gets really crazy because, let me just make sure it's not in my notes. The attackers created their own RPC node that had the malicious code in it, and then they DDoSed the functioning nodes on Layer 0. Meaning they spammed those nodes so much that the nodes shut down from having so much information thrown at them, and they reverted to the malicious RPC nodes. The DVN then verified a fake transaction that once Layer 0 was using these malicious RPC nodes, the actor, Lazarus Group, sent a fake transaction as a legitimate one, and this was how the 116.5 thousand staked ETH, RS ETH, was released onto Ethereum against nothing. So the malicious RPC node convinced Layer 0 that this was a real transaction, and then the tokens were released onto Ethereum. The malicious RPC lied only to the DVN and told the truth to everyone else, including Layer 0's own monitoring, which is where this is really scary because the malicious actors were able to surgically manipulate this one transaction while making every other detecting factor signal that everything was moving according to plan, that everything was operating fine. There was no malicious attack going on. The attackers DDoSed the uncompromised backup RPCs to force a failover onto the poisoned ones. Critical configuration point. Kelp used, and this is, if we go to Layer 0's post-mortem, they actually blame Kelp. Where do they say it specifically? I'm not going to... Oh, right here. Layer 0 and other external parties previously communicated best practices around DVN diversification to KelpDAO. Despite these recommendations, KelpDAO chose to utilize a one-of-one DVN configuration. There was no backup. All the bad actors had to do was trick the one DVN being managed by KelpDAO. And that was how they were able to get all 116,500 RSETH off of the KelpDAO chain and onto Ethereum. Layer Zero's postmortem is basically doing CYA, cover your ass, and stating that we tell all of our blockchain partners to use a multi-configured DVN setup. One of one is not secure for this reason. Okay. Meaning, so with the one of one DVN setup, a single verifier is the sole check on the transaction. So without any other verifiers in a multi-sig-like setup, then the malicious actors were able to trigger this transaction to send it to Ethereum. However, and that is that the sole DVN was also Layer Zero's own infrastructure, and there are 11 of 12 Kelp inbound routes that used the same pattern. So this is not unique to Kelp. There are other blockchains leveraging Layer Zero that also use this one of one setup, and it was Layer Zero's infrastructure that was used. Not to point blame on Layer Zero or to remove blame from KelpDAO, just pointing out that there's a lot of nuance in what happened here, and both sides are probably trying to save face while also figuring out what to do with a $290 to $292 million hack. I do believe this is the 9th largest hack that's ever happened in the history of blockchain and crypto. And this is the second time in 3 weeks that the 9th largest hack in the history of blockchain and crypto happened. Drift Protocol just happened 3 weeks ago. So, why is this a big deal? You might not have ever heard of KelpDAO. A lot of folks might not be familiar with what Layer Zero is or what cross-chain bridging solutions are. I mean, if you're watching this, you're probably a degen. You're probably a crypto native, so you know a little bit more about cross-chain bridging than the average person. But why this is such a big deal is because of the risk of contagion. And what is contagion? Negative externalities, negative side effects that will impact other DeFi platforms, that will impact other blockchain ecosystems as a result of this massive hack. The attackers didn't just steal the RSETH and run. They deposited that unbacked RSETH into Aave as collateral and borrowed real Ethereum against it. So this was how they were laundering the funds. It was estimated that anywhere between $177 million to over $200 million in Aave bad debt was accrued from this RSETH being used as collateral. In addition to Aave, Compound V3 and Euler were also attacked by this negative or this bad debt, though at a much smaller scale. And any Aave and V3 markets that were tied to RSETH were frozen within hours. Aave's umbrella coverage holds about $50 million, which will probably be insufficient to be able to absorb this bad debt because it's at least 3x bigger, maybe even 4x bigger. So what is the Aave liquidity crisis that we're starting to see unfold in front of us? Well, immediately after the attack, whales started moving. Justin Sun, Mexi, and others pulled billions in value from Aave within hours. Aave lost over $6 billion in TVL within the first 24 hours of the attack. Core markets hit 100% utilization. First ETH, then USDT and USDC. What does 100% utilization mean? That there is no capital left in those pools for lenders to withdraw. If you were lending USDC, USDT, or ETH on Aave, You are unable to get that right now. Maybe it's a little bit different now. It's been this is an ever-evolving situation. I haven't checked in the past 2 hours. Maybe utilization rates are down a little bit. I don't know. What I'm seeing on CT is that this is still unfolding. So what does that mean? Roughly $3 billion in USDT and $2 billion in USDC is locked and unwithdrawable. Why did this happen? What's going on? What's the bigger risk? Well, the stranded depositors, the people who are lending their ETH and USDT and USDC, started borrowing against their own locked deposits just to access liquidity. So what's like a real world example of this? Your money is in a bank and the bank says you're not allowed to withdraw your money, but you create a line of credit using the funds in your bank account. So you create a loan that you're paying interest on just to gain access to liquidity, which is also further increasing the leverage in the system, because now not only do we have locked assets, but now there are people taking loans against those assets just because they want to have the liquidity. Chaos Labs data shows roughly $300 million in new borrowing against USDT collateral in the first 24 hours. MoneySupply.eth, the head of strategy at a rival lender, Spark, flagged this as a concerning knock-on effect of the Aave stablecoin illiquidity. So when fresh liquidity using the bank example that I was talking about earlier, we have all these people taking out loans, and whenever fresh liquidity is coming in to Aave, folks who are trying to take advantage of this and maybe earn a little bit extra interest on the assets that they're depositing for lending out, bots are immediately popping up and grabbing this liquidity. And Stani Kulichev has publicly confirmed that the exploit was external and that Aave's contracts were not compromised. The problems we're seeing with Aave are just free market knock-on effects. Now, RSETH is also going to be facing a haircut dilemma. Roughly 17 to 18% of the total RSETH supply is now unbacked. Mainnet RSETH is technically still backed by the underlying liquid staking token collateral, but the contracts are paused, so there's no source for redemption right now. Kelp currently has two paths, and neither are clean. They can either socialize the loss across all holders as a universal haircut, or push 100% of the losses onto layer 2 RSETH holders. So does the entire RSETH token holder base eat this 20% loss, or does the entire loss get subsidized by anybody holding RSETH on an L2? These are two nasty situations. Compound and Aave are pushing for the L2 only haircut because most of their collateral is on Ethereum. Whereas Euler and other frontier market protocols are signaling that they'll push for the universal socialization. Either outcome will likely trigger lawsuits, and according to sources, lawyers are reportedly already engaged. There's also a broader ecosystem impact. Athena and other issuers paused their layer 0 bridging as a precaution. Many L2 teams paused their bridges while they're awaiting a full postmortem. Protocols relying on Aave for their earn mechanics are stuck too and may be forced to incur bad debt through no fault of their own, which really highlights what the problem is with this entire hack and the interconnectedness of DeFi protocols in Ethereum and on the L2s, and also just liquid restaking. Who the hell is KelpDAO? What the hell is RSETH? And why was there so much of this value using ETH as collateral to wrap RSETH? And where were all these loans being used as RSETH as the collateral? Why is this okay? And I think these are the questions that we have to start asking ourselves when we start to examine and look in the mirror the significance and the role of DeFi. I'm a huge fan of DeFi. This is one of the first mechanisms where those who can't gain access to the bank are able to use their cryptocurrency as a way to borrow or lend and either A, earn interest on their dormant capital, or B, take out a loan for whatever they might need. Life expenses, to launch a business, whatever people would take a loan out for. That they wouldn't have been able to do because they couldn't gain access to a bank account. The majority of the world doesn't have a bank account. The majority of the world is unbanked. And this is the power behind crypto and DeFi. But at what point have we gone too far? And at what point does the free market get greedy by allowing an underlying asset that's already super volatile be used as collateral for a new wrapper, and that wrapper is going to be used as underlying collateral for new debt obligations? None of us have ever heard of KelpDAO. I'm just proselytizing here. Maybe you are impacted by KelpDAO, and if you are, I feel for you. I personally, I'm knee deep in blockchain and crypto. This is my full-time job. I've been doing this since January 2018. I never heard of KelpDAO or RSETH. And yet, because of this, the entire industry is now facing contagion. And Aave, one of the premier DeFi platforms in the crypto space, is facing a massive, massive, massive bad debt issue. And this isn't Aave's fault. This is our fault as the blockchain and crypto industry. But what is this going to do for perception? How is this going to impact traditional banks and traditional financial institutions onboarding? Does this set DeFi back? Does this stop DeFi from being integrated into mainstream processes? How are we going to see us build out of this situation? A lot of unanswered questions right now that are being brought up from a really negative and scary situation. So, what are the next steps? For layer 0, all affected RPC nodes were replaced. The DVN is live again. Layer 0 Labs is no longer signing messages from any one-of-one DVN configuration. They're actively migrating all one-of-one apps to multi-DVN setups. They're also in contact with multiple law enforcement agencies and are supporting SEAL 911 on multiple tracking. Go check out SEAL 911. They're much like the cops. You never want to deal with them until you have to, because they're the last resort for security tracking. Kelp has to figure out the law socialization issue and defend itself legally, and it has to restore a redemption path. Aave needs to restore market confidence to unlock core liquidity and address the bad debt on its books now. An Ethereum wallet collector, Ethereum collector wallet is holding 75.7K ETH. The attackers' open positions on Aave, on Ethereum, and Arbitrum are live and open. So this is still a very much live and unwinding and unfolding situation. But we also see DeFi protocols stepping in and providing solutions. So Fluid, I'm a big fan of Fluid. I'm friends with their head of marketing. Shout out to Anna. Fluid has introduced a AWETH redemption protocol. Cool. More letters in front of ETH, which it feels like is what got us into this problem. RSETH, AWETH, WrappedETH. Yeah. But since ETH utilization is at 100% on Aave, many lenders are currently unable to withdraw. And they face increasing risk if markets move negatively. So a AWETH redemption protocol allows ETH lenders to exit into wrapped staked ETH or wrapped ETH, regain immediate liquidity, and reduce exposure to liquidation risk. So if you're just lending ETH on Aave, you can fully exit through this solution on Fluid. And Fluid's bet, I'm just reading between the lines here. Fluid's bet is that ultimately this will be resolved and that they are buying depreciated assets at a good price right now. That's me reading between the lines. I might not be technically correct. I might have some information wrong. Don't yell at me. Don't send the pitchforks at me. I'm fully acknowledging that I might not be 100% in what I'm talking about here. Let's see if there's any chat. Nope, not yet. So the last thing I want to say is that while as a market, as participants in blockchain and crypto, we are experiencing pain, markets worked as they were supposed to. The DeFi mechanisms continued operating, and despite the fact that they were manipulated, they functioned as they were supposed to. The hacker found ways to break the rules, which we don't like to see, but the losses were actualized to the actual asset. And despite the liquidations, despite the bad debt and all that, our blockchains continued producing blocks. Our DeFi protocols continued operating as they were supposed to. And there's kind of a sad beauty. This is a comedic tragedy at the end of the day, because our DeFi, our free market protocols continued to operate despite the fact that a very bad thing happened. So the silver lining here is that there was no bank to shut you out. There was no global economy that collapsed as a result of layers and layers and layers and layers of leverage. Only the parties and entities affected by RSETH were impacted, and it was great, and it has contagion, but our systems are working beautifully. And this is a very negative instance of how beautiful they operate, but they did what they were built to do. And so this feels like the end of Fight Club when Marla and Tyler Durden are holding hands and they're watching the credit card company's business buildings collapse, where everything was being broken down, but the system that they built operated as it was intended to. So I think this is our Fight Club moment. Keep your ears to the ground for what happens next with this whole drama. In addition to just the absolute massive hack that happened this weekend with KelpDAO, Web3 hosting backbone Vercel also got hacked, and now the hacker's demanding $2 million in ransom. Vercel is a cloud development platform where attackers were able to gain unauthorized access to parts of its internal infrastructure, which could have knock-on effects for many crypto projects that host front ends using the Vercel service. Vercel said, quote, "Our investigation has revealed that the incident originated from a third-party AI tool whose Google Workspace OAuth app was the subject of a broader compromise, potentially affecting hundreds of its users across many organizations. We believe the attacking group to be highly sophisticated, and I strongly suspect significantly accelerated by AI. He went on to say the attackers moved with surprising velocity and an in-depth understanding of Vercel. Look, welcome to security season. With quantum and AI, quantum computing coming closer and AI getting stronger, we're just going to see more and more of these attacks. So yeah, a Vercel employee's account was compromised via a breach on the AI platform that they were using. And now, this is unfortunate, but the attacker is holding Vercel ransom for $2 million. And they're stating that they have access to keys, source code, database records, and internal deployment credentials, including NPM and GitHub tokens, which could be really nasty because they could start to push a lot of malicious code into a lot of different devices using NPM. This was the cause of the Axios hack three or 4 weeks back, where hundreds of millions of files that are downloaded weekly are done so via NPM. And that attack took everybody by storm. You had no idea you were downloading malicious code because you were just doing an NPM install, which is something that developers do weekly. And there's no way that you're going to be able to review all of the code beforehand and know that you're installing something malicious. The attacker also shared a sample of proof that and this is pretty scary, that contained 580 employee records with names, company email address, account statuses, and activity timestamps. Pretty gnarly and unfortunate for those 580 to be doxed in that way. Why does this matter for crypto? Web3 teams regularly deploy wallet interfaces, DEX front ends, and dApp dashboards on Vercel. And any project that stored private RPC endpoints, third-party API keys, or wallet-related secrets in plain environment variables may now need to treat those secrets as compromised. This is also a larger looming threat of security season that we're in right now, because front-end compromises are becoming a recurring problem in the industry. This just happened to CowSwap last week, where they had to pause trading because their domain got hijacked. Aerodrome and Velodrome were both hit by a DNS hijack last November. And EasyDNS just yesterday admitted culpability for the DNS hijacking of the ETH.limo project. So this is just another attack vector that we have to be worried about. And the worst part is this isn't anything that you as an end user can do to protect yourself, because you're using these platforms because they provide you with services, they provide you with features, they provide you with opportunities to earn capital, to make potentially good trades, to stake, and now you just don't know the platform that you're using, if it's safe or not. And I'm sorry to be a super alarmist today on Monday. I mean, it is 420. Today's the day when everybody in the US who smokes weed is getting high. But I don't think that there's a high point to today's conversation. Look, the narrative of 2026 to me is the narrative that doesn't benefit the retail user. In 2026, we're seeing absolute, just insane adoption of blockchain and crypto at the institutional level. And we're seeing just insane attacks on security on applications that retail uses. 2026 is not the year of the retail user. We are not getting any of the positive, and we're getting all of the negative. And I don't think that this is going to get any better moving forward. And this is going to be my last doom and gloom, and then I swear I'll finish on something positive. But Udi Wertheimer, big fan of Udi's, by the way, he recently said that Lightning Network is doomed once Quantum is here, and that it's helplessly broken. Udi is kind of a troll, which is why I like him. But I think he uses his trolling to raise awareness of issues and to heighten awareness of forthcoming problems that people don't want to deal with. And I also think he tactically trolls to gain attention for his projects, which, hey, don't hate the game. Don't hate the player, hate the game. So Udi said, where's the overview? That Lightning Network is helplessly broken in a post-quantum world and that developers can do nothing about it. So what did he get right? Well, Lightning channels are state channels for the blockchain network, the Bitcoin network. Requires participants to share public keys with their counterparty when opening a payment channel. In a world where cryptographically relevant quantum computers exist, an attacker who obtains those public keys could theoretically use Shor's algorithm to derive the corresponding private key and from there steal funds. It's a real and specific vulnerability, but the attack vector that Udi pointed out is a timed race against an attacker who must actively solve one of the hardest mathematical problems in existence within a fixed window for each individual output they want to steal. It's not passive, and it's not a silent drain on every Lightning wallet simultaneously. The malicious actor will have to target specific channels and specific transactions, which currently is very difficult to do, even with our understanding of where quantum computing will be once it is functional. And I want to note that all of the quantum fears you're having right now, you're hearing right now, that people are talking about, none of these computers are in existence. None of them are operating, unless, of course, it's some deep state secret that a government has quantum computing already. And if that's the case, well, hey, it is what it is. However, the part that, yeah, that's what this brought up right here. So I think what I really want to point out from this story is just the fact that the Bitcoin community has finally started caring about quantum computing, has finally started acknowledging that this is a risk, and they're building solutions for it. Jameson Lopp proposed BIP 361 last week that would effectively freeze Satoshi's coins and other pre-modern cryptography schema wallets. And look, it's not a great solution. It's not an elegant solution, but it certainly is better to freeze a third of the Bitcoin supply and have a mechanism for people to come back and claim those assets, or give them a multi-year window to claim those assets before they're frozen, rather than just having some malicious actor with access to quantum computing steal Satoshi's coins and steal the other third of the supply of tokens, of Bitcoin tokens that are at risk, and then selling them on the free market. Since December alone, the Bitcoin development community has produced more than 5 serious post-quantum proposals. Shrimps, BIP 360, OP Sphinx, OPXMSS, and Stark-based opcodes in TapScript. So, despite all of Udi's trolling on Lightning, I think this article did a great job of putting it this way. The correct framing is not that Lightning is broken and unfixable. It's that Lightning, like all of Bitcoin and most of the internet's cryptographic infrastructure, requires a base layer upgrade to become quantum resistant, and that work is underway. So we'll use that positive spin on the end of this article to transition to our last pieces of stories today. And once again, our heroes of the DAT, our fearless leaders who seemingly have bottomless wallets, are continuing to purchase their favorite assets. Tom Lee says that crypto winter is much closer to ending and bought 101,627 ETH last week and they now hold 4.98 million ETH, total equivalent to 4.12% of the total supply. And that he calls it the dual wins of institutional tokenization. Wow, that's a really nice name for what's happening. Blockchain and crypto adoption, tokenization adoption at the institutional level. None of that is trickling downstream to you or my wallet. And then, of course, Michael Saylor continued to buy. Holy crap. He bought 34,164 Bitcoin for $2.54 billion, bringing his total holdings to 815,061 Bitcoin. Now, we're going to leave this on a positive note, even though I do want to state that at a certain point, I am going to start getting concerned when a centralized entity holds this much of the token supply of an asset. But hey, one battle at a time, right, folks? So, with all that said, I'm sorry I didn't have much good news for you today, but we had a hell of a weekend. And honestly, 2026 has been a gnarly year. The FBI reported that more than $11 billion in crypto was stolen in 2025. And I think we just need to start bracing ourselves and preparing ourselves for the fact that that number is likely going to be higher in 2026. And also use this as an opportunity to really evaluate the risk that you are taking on and what products and tools you're using. Maybe you're lending your ETH on Fluid. Ask yourself, is that extra yield that you're getting from lending your ETH on Fluid better than if you were to just stake it on your own? Do you really want to be in some random staked ETH wrapper? Is that a place you really want to be? Is that better, that extra interest you're getting, or that extra ability to borrow and lend that staked ETH? Is that better than the security of having your ETH no matter what in 5-10 years? If you've been thinking of consolidating into Bitcoin because you had a bunch of Alt L1s or whatever, is now the time to get into an asset that you know you can do your absolute best to make sure you have the most security built in for yourself. If you know that you know how to maintain a seed phrase and you can keep a few assets safe, is now the time to consolidate into those assets? These are the questions you should be asking yourself, because I think now more than ever in the 9 years I've been in blockchain and crypto, now more than ever is the time to really be evaluating your personal setup, making sure you're keeping yourself secure, and also just evaluating what DeFi platforms you're using, what applications you're using. And just ask yourself, for every platform you're using, for every borrow lend you're making, for every LP you're contributing to, is it worth it? Is the extra yield worth it? If you're lending your Bitcoin, is the yield you're earning on your Bitcoin worth it? Just ask yourself these questions and think about the worst case scenarios, because this year we've seen a lot of worst case scenarios play out. But we still have our heroes, Bitmine and Tom Lee and Strategy and Saylor. There are still people that believe in the blue chip L1 thesis. Maybe just go dig into why they think this way. Evaluate your own assumptions. Keep yourself safe. And with all that said, if you haven't yet, please subscribe to The Smart Economist. You can see the link to the Smart Economist newsletter down there. I'm really, really, really looking forward to what we're going to do with this newsletter. And I hope it gives you as much value as I think it will. So, folks, I'm sorry that this was a crappy Monday, but it is a Monday after all. If 420 is the day you celebrate, happy 420 to all who celebrate. May your pressures and stress be alleviated by what you choose to do in your off time. And if not, hey, at least make a meme or a joke about it. We have to have something to laugh about, right? So, folks, with all that said, thank you so much for tuning in to the Daily Digital Download. I appreciate your time. We had a lot of viewers today. Thank you guys for your eyes and ears. I hope you learned something. And if you think I got anything wrong or you'd like to see anything else be spoken about, feel free to reach out to me. Call me out, call me dumb, call me smart, call me whatever you want to call me, but please, just call me. All right, guys, have a safe day. I'll catch up with you tomorrow.